You lose most battles not because you are wrong, but because you argue. Today, we solve a universal problem. How do you win instantly, without raising your voice, without debating, and without giving your enemy the satisfaction of a response? This is Machiavelli's trick that ends every argument before it begins. Every day, someone challenges your decisions, questions your motives, or tries to pull you into pointless emotional battles. You argue, they argue, and suddenly you've lost time, power, and credibility. Machiavelli warned rulers, the one who argues kneels, the one who stays silent rules. In this lesson, you will learn the tactic that great leaders, kings, and strategists used to win without ever arguing back. Let us begin with a truth. Machiavelli understood long before modern minds tried to complicate it: the moment you step into an argument, you step off the throne. Power is not measured by how loudly you speak, how passionately you defend yourself, or how cleverly you structure your points. Power is measured by how little you need to explain yourself. And yet, most people fall into the same trap. The instant someone challenges them, they respond like a cornered animal, rushing to defend, justify, plead, and prove. They believe they are winning because they are talking. In reality, they have already surrendered. Because when you argue, you accept your opponent's frame. You give them the authority to question you. You acknowledge that their criticism matters. You admit, silently but clearly, that you need their validation. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine a ruler seated on his chair, calm, unmoved, allowing his enemies to throw accusations into the air while he simply watches. That silence is not weakness. It is a blade, a weapon sharper than any argument. Machiavelli observed that people often defeat themselves if you give them enough rope. They reveal their fears, their contradictions, their insecurities. They talk until they expose the foolishness in their own position. They escalate until they appear irrational. When you remain silent, the audience sees two figures, one who is emotionally unraveling and one who refuses to be disturbed, and instinctively people trust calmness over noise. They follow the one who controls himself, not the one who cannot control his tongue. Think about how arguments truly unfold. At first, there is the accusation, a question, a challenge, something meant to provoke. But the real trap lies in the reaction. If you respond instantly, you respond emotionally, and emotional responses signal vulnerability. People sense it. They can smell uncertainty, like wolves scent blood. And once they sense it, the argument becomes theirs, not yours. They drag you deeper. They raise their voice, so you raise yours. They twist your words, so you correct them. They play on your pride, so you defend it. And slowly they pull you down from the position of authority to the level of a street brawl. Machiavelli understood this psychological descent. He understood that the stronger man does not win the argument, the stronger man avoids it altogether. Silence in this sense is not passive, it is active domination. It shifts the burden of proof entirely onto the opponent. It forces them to explain themselves again and again, each explanation revealing cracks in their logic. Their frustration grows because the one thing they desperately want, your reaction, is the one thing you refuse to give. They want you flustered, defensive, emotional. They want you to play their game, but your silence tells them that you do not acknowledge their power, that you are not obligated to answer them, that you stand above the entire dispute. This infuriates the weak, frightens the ambitious, and impresses the masses. Consider a courtroom, not a modern one, but a Renaissance court filled with nobles, schemers, courtiers, and spies. Everyone watches every gesture, every breath, every flicker of emotion. A rival minister stands up and accuses the prince of making a foolish decision. The court gasps. All eyes turn to the prince. If he argues, he becomes just another man defending his pride. But if he sits still, if he looks at the accuser with quiet curiosity, if he lets the silence stretch, suddenly the focus shifts. The accuser grows uneasy. He begins to explain himself further. His voice trembles, his argument weakens. The crowd begins to see him as desperate. The prince, without uttering a word, wins. This tactic works because human beings fear silence more than arguments. Silence is unpredictable. Silence is powerful. Silence forces reflection. Your opponent begins to wonder what you are thinking. Are you planning a counterattack? Are you unimpressed? Are you silently gathering information? Their imagination becomes your ally. Their mind becomes your battlefield. They overthink, over-explain, overreact. You control the conflict without lifting a finger. And here is the deeper psychological layer. When you argue, you place yourself on equal footing with the person attacking you. When you do not argue, you place yourself above them. Machiavelli believed that leaders should always appear superior, distant, and imperturbable, not because superiority is morally right, but because humans instinctively obey strength and stability. If you argue with a fool, the public sees two fools. If you remain composed while a fool rants, the public sees exactly who the fool is. Silence also protects your strategy. Arguments reveal information, your emotions, your beliefs, your triggers, your weaknesses. Every sentence you speak becomes a tool your enemy can use later. But silence reveals nothing. It gives no foothold, no leverage. It is a wall they cannot climb, a darkness they cannot see through. And because humans fear the unknown, your silence becomes intimidation. Most people believe victory is about proving the other person wrong. Machiavelli knew victory is about positioning. The one who keeps his composure controls the room. The one who speaks least controls the narrative. The one who reacts last controls the outcome. And the one who argues the least controls the power. This is why the great strategists, leaders, and rulers of history mastered the art of withholding their voice until the moment it served them. Silence was not avoidance. Silence was dominance. Silence forced their enemies into overexposure, overreaction, and self-destruction. Machiavelli understood a simple truth that most people today still fail to grasp. Reality does not determine power. Perception does. In every court, every council, every market of influence, the visible truth is often irrelevant. What matters is what others believe about your strength, your wisdom, your authority. A ruler who loses a debate but maintains the appearance of control has already won. Conversely, a man who wins the words but loses the audience's perception is defeated before the battle ends. Debates are illusions of control. They create the feeling of confrontation, of engagement, of rational superiority. But the human mind is not a rational machine. It is an instrument of instinct, fear, and desire. People do not follow the person with the best argument. They follow the person who appears unshakable, composed, and commanding. To argue is to enter a subjective arena that your opponent may control. To control perception, however, is to step outside the arena entirely and make your presence itself a weapon. Consider the examples Machiavelli drew from the courts of Renaissance Italy. Princes and dukes often faced plots, insults, and betrayals not in the battlefield, but in whispered conversations, in council chambers, in letters delivered under candlelight. A minister might accuse the prince of incompetence, or a rival noble might spread rumors to weaken the prince's alliances. If the prince immediately confronted each accusation with logic, he risked appearing reactive, defensive, or emotionally invested. To the observer, he became like any other man, fallible, imperfect, human. But if he chose instead to maintain calm, to respond with measured gestures or calculated silence, the court interpreted that calm as wisdom, foresight, and strength. The prince who controlled perception did not need to prove himself correct in every debate. He needed only to appear commanding, confident, and above trivial squabbles. That appearance alone solidified loyalty and respect. This principle is vital in daily life as well. When someone challenges your authority, your decision, or your credibility, your first instinct might be to argue, to explain, clarify, or justify. You believe that by demonstrating the correctness of your position, you gain power. In truth, each word you speak risks exposing hesitation, doubt, or fear. The audience sees not the logic of your argument, but the energy you expend to defend yourself. And the energy you expend may appear as weakness. People read urgency as insecurity. They read excessive explanation as uncertainty. They read emotional defense as desperation. In contrast, a ruler who controls perception, who responds selectively, speaks sparingly, and acts decisively impresses strength and competence without proving anything at all. Controlling perception is not deception in the sense of falsehood. It is shaping how your actions and presence are interpreted. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the role of appearances in power. A ruler must always appear merciful, faithful, humane, honest, and religious, but he need not always act in accordance with these virtues. The public, the court, and even adversaries will often never discover the true motives behind a calm, controlled figure. What matters is that they believe in the perception you project. When people believe in your strength, they hesitate to oppose you. When they perceive wisdom, they defer to your judgment. When they see composure, they submit to your authority. Winning debates, proving points, or exposing flaws becomes irrelevant because perception alone has already secured influence and dominance. Even in conflicts where logic seems decisive, perception can override truth. Think of a council meeting where two ministers present opposing plans. One minister argues passionately, citing facts and figures, trying to convince the room with the clarity of his intellect. The other minister says little but remains calm, smiling subtly, acknowledging points without direct confrontation. Observers tend to favor the second minister, interpreting his restraint as confidence and mastery, while the first minister's energy may be perceived as agitation or uncertainty. The debate is won not by facts, but by appearance. This is the essence of Machiavellian strategy, controlling how others perceive your power, intelligence, and composure to shape their decisions in your favor. Moreover, perception is cumulative. Each interaction builds an image that extends far beyond the immediate conflict. A ruler or leader who consistently demonstrates calm dominance, restraint, and selective speech accumulates credibility. His presence alone communicates authority. People anticipate his decisions, respect his judgment, and fear his opposition. Conversely, a ruler who constantly argues, reacts, or defends himself builds a perception of instability. Even if he proves his point repeatedly, the energy spent to justify his position diminishes his influence over time. His authority becomes conditional on his ability to respond, and as soon as he falters, his power erodes. The key, therefore, is not to focus on being right or winning debates. The key is to manage the optics of every encounter. Every gesture, every pause, every word you choose to speak or not speak contributes to a larger perception of authority. By controlling perception, you force others to react to you, not the other way around. You shape the battlefield without entering it. You influence outcomes without engaging in unnecessary conflict. In this way, perception becomes a silent, inexorable force, far more effective than argument. And the beauty of this strategy is that it is self-reinforcing. When your perception is controlled, opponents hesitate, allies trust, and bystanders admire. Arguments lose their power over you because people no longer rely on debates to assess your authority. They already know where you stand. Your dominance becomes unshakable, not through words, but through the invisible architecture of how others see and interpret your actions. This is why Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized that rulers should appear more competent, composed, and decisive than they might actually feel in private. To control perception is to bend reality to your will. It is not lying, it is mastery. It is winning battles before they are fought, simply because others believe in your strength, not because you argued to prove it. Machiavelli understood a profound truth that remains as relevant today as it was in the courts of Renaissance Italy. True power is never demonstrated in volume, but in composure. When your opponent rises, shrieking with accusations, trying to provoke a response, the instinct is almost always the same: to counter, to defend, to prove. Yet it is precisely in that moment that authority is lost. To argue, to justify, to engage emotionally, is to hand the opponent the reins of the interaction. The one who reacts first is always perceived as weaker because reaction implies disturbance, and disturbance implies vulnerability. Machiavelli observed that the superior mind never succumbs to such provocation. He sits, he observes, he controls. Imagine a council room in Florence where a minister publicly questions a prince's policy. Every eye is on the ruler. The minister expects a defensive storm, a refutation, a furious explanation, but the prince remains calm. He leans back, his gaze steady, his posture relaxed, his silence deliberate. The room begins to shift its attention. The minister fumbles, repeats himself, grows frustrated. Each word the minister utters becomes a trap for his own credibility. The more he talks, the more inconsistencies emerge, the more irrational he appears. Meanwhile, the prince, though silent, exudes dominance. Composure alone conveys superiority. The audience instinctively judges the one who argues as desperate and the one who is calm as authoritative. This principle transcends politics. In personal and professional conflicts, people often equate speaking more with winning more. They believe that logic, facts, and explanations carry ultimate weight. Machiavelli knew this is an illusion. Facts and logic can only convince if the listener is receptive, and humans are rarely purely rational. Emotion, perception, and the projection of power dominate. The one who appears unshakable becomes the anchor in any storm, and by contrast, those who argue appear unstable, insecure, or overly invested. Every defensive statement you make chips away at your credibility, while every moment of calm strengthens it. To appear calm and superior is a strategic choice, not a passive state. Machiavelli believed that a ruler's demeanor must be cultivated carefully. Facial expressions, gestures, tone of voice, and even silence become tools of influence. When faced with provocation, the superior figure maintains an almost imperceptible control over these elements. A slight smile, a raised eyebrow, a quiet question. These subtle signals can make the aggressor doubt their own argument. They begin to stumble, searching for validation that will never come. Each attempt to overpower or intimidate you only highlights their own weaknesses, and the observer perceives it clearly. In this way, you allow your opponent to burn their own credibility while you remain unscathed. Machiavelli often emphasized that it is not the truth of a statement that carries authority, but the strength of the one delivering it. In arguments, the one who appears composed and superior dominates not because they are correct, but because they control the emotional atmosphere. When an opponent raises their voice, it creates tension. The audience becomes uneasy, uncertain who is in command. A calm figure immediately dissipates this tension. People are drawn to certainty, to security, to those who seem unaffected by chaos. Calmness is a visual signal of strength, and superiority is a silent declaration of control. Together, they form a psychological shield that the opponent cannot penetrate. Letting the other side burn their own credibility requires patience. It demands that you resist the urge to respond to every accusation or provocation. This patience is not passive, it is strategic. Machiavelli wrote about rulers who could wait hours, even days, before responding to challenges. In that time, opponents exhaust themselves, over-explain, and reveal their flaws. Their credibility deteriorates without any action from the ruler. The audience, witnessing this decay, naturally aligns with the composed figure. This is a silent conquest, a battle won without raising a hand or speaking a word. There is a deeper psychological layer to this tactic. Humans are wired to seek social validation. When someone in a position of power remains calm and superior, it signals that the argument is beneath them. The opponent senses that their attack has no effect, and their frustration intensifies. The more they try to prove themselves, the more the audience notices their failure to sway the composed figure. This dynamic amplifies the power imbalance. Machiavelli recognized that leaders could manipulate this imbalance subtly, turning emotional energy against the opponent, allowing them to self-destruct while the ruler maintains dominance. Even beyond individual conflicts, the principle holds in larger social arenas. A politician, a manager, or a public figure who remains composed in the face of criticism is instantly perceived as a leader. The louder and more frantic the criticism, the more the audience questions the critic, rather than the one criticized. In contrast, a reactive individual diminishes themselves. The act of speaking without composure signals vulnerability. It suggests a need for validation, a lack of control, or a susceptibility to manipulation. Observers, consciously or unconsciously, reward calmness with respect, trust, and authority. Machiavelli's insight is timeless. Appearances shape reality. By appearing calm and superior, you do not merely resist attacks, you invert them. You turn your opponent's energy, their anger, their insistence, into evidence of their own inadequacy. You become the standard against which all others are judged. You create a space where your silence speaks louder than their words, where your restraint communicates more power than any argument, and where your confidence becomes unassailable. The more they strive to undermine you, the more they expose themselves, and the more your position strengthens. This approach requires discipline and observation. Every gesture must be intentional. Every reaction, or lack of reaction, must be measured. Machiavelli insisted that mastery over oneself is mastery over others. By controlling your own responses, by maintaining calm and superiority, you control the battlefield of perception. The other side cannot hurt you without hurting themselves, and the audience cannot be persuaded against you because they witness firsthand the contrast between composure and chaos, between authority and desperation, between wisdom and folly. Key is to allow your opponent to do the work of undermining themselves. Their attempts to provoke you, to argue, to dominate, all become evidence of their flaws. And as they expose these flaws, you remain untouchable, your calm superiority radiating through the room, through the interaction, and through every observer's perception, solidifying your dominance without uttering a word. Machiavelli understood a critical law of power. Engaging in conflict on the terms set by your opponent is the fastest path to defeat. In every argument, every confrontation, every attempt to assert authority, people make the same mistake. They meet aggression with aggression, accusation with defense, insult with rebuttal. They believe that responding directly demonstrates strength, intelligence, or moral superiority. Machiavelli saw through this illusion. To respond to an attack is to step onto your opponent's battlefield. It is to accept their rules, their framing, their terms, and once you do, you have already ceded control. The truly powerful ruler does not fight where the battle is declared. He shifts the battlefield entirely. He redirects the conflict, transforming the attack into a self-inflicted trap for the opponent. Consider a scenario in a Renaissance court. A noble publicly challenges the ruler's decision, attempting to provoke embarrassment or doubt. The instinctive response for most is to defend the decision, point by point, fact by fact, argument by argument. But in doing so, the ruler accepts the premise of the challenger, validating it simply by addressing it. Every defense reinforces the notion that the question was valid, that the challenger's attack mattered. Machiavelli teaches a different path: redirect the confrontation. The ruler does not argue. Instead, he shifts the attention, asks the challenger to clarify, to explain, to justify. Suddenly, the challenger is no longer attacking, he is defending. He becomes the one under scrutiny. The energy of confrontation has been inverted, and the ruler maintains dominance without confrontation. This is not a strategy of avoidance, it is strategy of control. Redirecting conflict requires observation, patience, and precise timing. The ruler must understand the intent behind the attack, anticipate the opponent's next moves, and guide the interaction so that the aggressor becomes entangled in their own momentum. Every question, every accusation, every attempt to provoke becomes an opportunity for the opponent to overreach, expose their own weaknesses, and exhaust their credibility. Meanwhile, the ruler retains composure, appearing deliberate, wise, and untouchable. Redirecting also works because it forces the opponent into a position they cannot easily defend. When someone attacks, they create a perception of power. They appear to be the one driving the encounter. But the moment you shift the conversation, the attacker must now respond, explain, and justify. The initiative passes from them to you, and they are compelled to act on your terms. Machiavelli recognized that this inversion of roles is the essence of strategic dominance. By redirecting, rather than engaging, the ruler transforms the conflict from a contest of words into a demonstration of control. The audience sees the aggressor floundering, defending, struggling, while the ruler appears composed, intelligent, and unshakable. In practical terms, redirection can take many forms. It may involve asking a simple question that exposes gaps in the opponent's argument. It may involve delegating the response to a neutral form, such as a written explanation or a counsel review, forcing the challenger to invest energy while you remain above the fray. It may involve reframing the issue entirely, turning the focus to a broader principle or alternative perspective. Machiavelli observed that a ruler who masters this technique becomes nearly invulnerable to attacks. Opponents expend their resources, energy, and credibility in futile efforts, while the ruler's authority is enhanced by contrast. The psychological power of redirection is profound. Humans are naturally defensive. When forced to justify their actions, they reveal motivations, contradictions, and insecurities. By redirecting conflict, you compel the opponent to reveal themselves. Every word they speak under the pressure of defense becomes evidence of their limitations. Meanwhile, your silence, calm, and selective engagement broadcast mastery. Observers, whether courtiers, allies, or the public, interpret your restraint as wisdom and power. Machiavelli understood that perception is often more influential than reality. By forcing the attacker to defend, you shape perception without needing to argue or prove anything. Another advantage of redirection is that it allows the ruler to conserve energy while exhausting the opponent. Arguments are taxing, emotionally and mentally. By refusing to engage on the opponent's terms, you avoid the depletion that comes from endless defense, counterpoints, and reactive measures. The opponent, on the other hand, expends effort, emotion, and focus attempting to force a reaction, only to discover that you are unaffected, unprovoked, and still in control. Machiavelli believed that mastery over one's energy and focus is essential to long-term power. By redirecting rather than engaging, the ruler preserves both, while the opponent diminishes themselves through overexertion. Redirection also demonstrates strategic foresight. The moment you respond directly to every attack, you appear reactive, subordinate to the flow of events. The moment you redirect, you appear proactive, in control, and calculated. Machiavelli insisted that appearances of control often matter more than actual control. When the audience perceives that the ruler dictates the course of events, that perception alone can neutralize threats, suppress dissent, and consolidate loyalty. Redirecting conflict allows you to project this perception without appearing aggressive, defensive, or reactive. In essence, Machiavelli's principle of redirection transforms conflict from a contest of words and emotions into a demonstration of authority and composure. You no longer fight your opponent where they choose, you draw them into a position where they must respond to you. You conserve your energy, protect your reputation, and weaken your opponent's credibility simultaneously. Observers witness your mastery, respect your restraint, and fear your authority. The more your opponent struggles to regain control, the stronger your position becomes. Conflict is neutralized not by proving yourself correct, but by controlling the direction, timing, and energy of the interaction. Through redirection, Machiavelli teaches a ruler to win battles without fighting them directly, to dominate without appearing combative, and to convert every attack into a demonstration of superiority. It is a subtle, precise, and powerful form of strategy that transforms human behavior into an instrument of control, ensuring that power remains with the composed, deliberate, and patient figure, while the aggressor burns their own credibility in the effort to provoke a reaction. Machiavelli understood that the most formidable power often lies not in speech, but in restraint. Words are dangerous tools. They can reveal your intentions, betray your emotions, and create openings for your adversaries. To talk too much, to argue, or to constantly explain oneself is to weaken authority. Machiavelli observed that rulers who speak less, who carefully choose their moments to act, often command far more influence than those who dominate the conversation. In fact, the act of restraint itself becomes a weapon, a strategic choice that conveys control, intelligence, and dominance. It is the paradox of power. Silence, when used correctly, speaks louder than any argument, and deliberate action carries far more weight than constant discourse. Consider the courts of Renaissance Italy, where intrigue was a daily reality, and every word could become a weapon against you. Princes and ministers often faced accusations, challenges, and plots designed to provoke reactions. Those who argued too readily, who tried to justify themselves, frequently lost not because they were wrong, but because their verbal energy revealed vulnerability. The observer, witnessing the struggle to defend, would question their strength, their judgment, and their authority. The ruler who spoke little, however, maintained an aura of impenetrability. Every rare word, every carefully measured statement was loaded with significance. People watched, waited, and interpreted silence as intelligence, patience, and strategic mastery. In this way, restraint itself became a form of influence stronger than speech or argument. Your restraint becomes a weapon because it forces others to reveal themselves. When someone attacks, criticizes, or challenges you, the instinct is often to respond, to counter, to assert your position. Machiavelli knew that this instinct is exactly what opponents exploit. By refraining from immediate reaction, by holding your composure and speaking selectively, you compel the aggressor to expose their own weaknesses. They over-explain, overreact, and provide evidence of their own limitations. Each attempt to provoke a response from you becomes a self-inflicted loss for them. Your restraint, in effect, inverts the power dynamic. The more your opponent pushes, the more their credibility erodes, and the more your authority grows. Action, when paired with restraint, magnifies this effect. A ruler who speaks little but acts decisively creates an environment where words are secondary to deeds. Machiavelli insisted that perception of action is crucial. It communicates competence, decisiveness, and dominance. The audience, whether courtiers, allies, or rivals, begins to associate restraint with mastery. They trust the one who acts effectively without wasting words, because action is measurable, undeniable, and powerful. Speech can be ignored or challenged, but carefully executed action commands respect and shapes reality. When restraint is combined with action, the result is authority that is not only seen but felt, influencing others in subtle yet profound ways. This principle operates on a psychological level as well. Humans tend to overvalue vocalization and underestimate the weight of restraint. The loudest voice is often mistaken for strength, while quiet observation is dismissed as passivity. Machiavelli turned this assumption into a weapon. By remaining calm, composed, and deliberate, a ruler signals that they are unaffected by noise, immune to provocation, and confident in their own judgment. The audience witnessing this begins to trust the ruler implicitly. They interpret silence as thoughtfulness, composure as intelligence, and restraint as mastery. Meanwhile, those who constantly speak or argue are scrutinized for inconsistency, emotional instability, or insecurity. In this dynamic, restraint is not merely defensive, it is aggressively dominant. Machiavelli also recognized that restraint preserves energy for moments of decisive action. Constantly engaging in disputes, defending your position, or countering every provocation drains mental and emotional resources. Those who act impulsively or argue excessively deplete themselves, leaving them vulnerable to strategic maneuvers by more disciplined opponents. A ruler who exercises restraint retains focus, patience, and clarity of thought. When the moment arrives to act, their execution is precise, effective, and unchallenged. This combination of measured silence and decisive action elevates their position far above those who expend themselves in fruitless verbal battles. Moreover, restraint commands loyalty. Observers and subordinates instinctively respect a figure who acts with purpose rather than words. People are drawn to leaders whose actions match their reputation, whose decisions are deliberate, and whose presence radiates calm authority. Machiavelli emphasized that trust is the foundation of power. A ruler who speaks less but acts consistently and effectively cultivates this trust. Their silence suggests confidence, their actions confirm competence. By contrast, one who argues incessantly, defends constantly, or seeks validation through speech may appear competent in theory but fails to inspire the same confidence or loyalty. Restraint, therefore, becomes a tool to solidify influence and command unwavering respect. The weaponization of restraint also extends to conflict and negotiation. By speaking less, you create scarcity in your communication, making every word carry weight. Opponents must consider your statements carefully, knowing that each one is deliberate. When combined with calculated action, this approach forces adversaries into a reactive stance. They overanalyze, second-guess, and often overextend themselves, while you maintain composure and control. Machiavelli understood that the ability to compel others into your frame without lifting your voice is one of the most subtle and effective forms of dominance. In essence, restraint is not passivity, it is mastery over yourself and over the situation. It transforms silence into a tool of influence, patience into a weapon, and selective action into undeniable authority. By speaking less and acting decisively, you project confidence, control, and power, compelling others to trust, respect, and ultimately defer to you. Machiavelli's insight is timeless. The one who masters restraint shapes not only the immediate conflict but the perceptions, loyalty, and behavior of all who observe. Restraint, when wielded skillfully, becomes a force multiplier. The fewer words you speak, the more weight each action carries. The calmer you remain, the more your adversaries reveal themselves. The less you argue, the more others validate your authority. By combining restraint with decisive action, you create an aura of power that is impenetrable, commanding, and universally recognized. Machiavelli teaches us that true power is subtle, strategic, and psychological. It is not won through loud arguments, constant defense, or the desperate need to be right. Power belongs to the one who controls perception, masters their own restraint, and acts decisively while others expose their weaknesses. By never arguing back, by remaining calm, composed, and superior, and by redirecting conflict instead of engaging it, you turn your silence and patience into weapons. Every word you choose to speak, every action you take, and every moment of composure shapes how others see you, how they respond, and ultimately, how they yield to your authority. When you stop giving your opponents the satisfaction of reaction, when you let them burn their own credibility while you stand untouched, you achieve a level of control few ever realize is possible. Your restraint commands respect. Your perception dictates outcomes. Your selective actions become undeniable proof of your mastery. The one who speaks least but acts most does not merely survive conflicts, they dominate them. In a world where many fight to be heard, remember Machiavelli's timeless lesson: you win not by arguing, but by commanding. You win not by proving, but by positioning. You win not by reacting, but by mastering the battlefield before it is even declared.